As anybody who follows the channel will know, I am a great advocate for asylum and for giving people the right to claim asylum in our country. I'm a great advocate for people who have been displaced by the war in Afghanistan, the war that we were fighting, to be given refuge in our country, particularly as we relied on so many Afghans to help us in Afghanistan against the Taliban. We have put their lives in danger by leaving so many of them in Afghanistan. I'm a great advocate for housing Ukrainians in our country, but doing so properly. I'm a great advocate for the 1951 Refugee Convention, which hasn't been changed and which therefore doesn't discriminate between people who come to this country by some sort of legally defined route or by a route that has not been defined, in other words, over the channel in a small dinghy. The people who were vilified by individuals like Alex Belfield, by indeed people like Nigel Farage. Until that convention is changed, I don't believe any form of unilateral definition by our current Home Secretary, who dreams of punishing people and sending people to Rwanda, extraordinary dreams. I don't believe any decision by her and by our government can overturn an internationally recognized convention that we were instrumental in writing in 1951. Very simple. However, we cannot overlook the times when these things go badly wrong. And we have to ask, well, we know why. Once we left Europe, once we left the security of a system which was controlled partly by the Dublin Convention, which saw people returned to the first port of entry where they could claim asylum in the European system, so that we could actually return people to that port should they be sort of shopping round from port to port, from place to place, to try and get asylum, possibly because they were perceived as a bad egg. We don't have that security anymore, and therefore we can fall foul of giving asylum to people who have already been rejected and should very well have been rejected and returned. One of these seems to be a person called Lorangin Abdul Rahim Zai, who stabbed and killed Tom Roberts, a 21-year-old in Bournemouth, in March 2022 last year. He denied attempting to cause him serious harm, but of course he actually killed him. The verdict, the verdict is clear. This was murder, and he had already murdered people with a Kalashnikov rifle in Serbia in 2018. He will be sentenced today. This is a man who represents a real risk, and he represented a real risk from before, from when he had murdered people in Serbia. It is extraordinary that he should have been given admission to our country. Certainly, he has a sorry story. He fled Afghanistan after the Taliban killed his parents and left him for dead. But, you know, unless we are going to offer serious help to somebody, one of his defense statements is effectively that he was paranoid and he thought everyone was going to try and kill him. But that isn't enough. That isn't sufficient. We need to we need to look more carefully at at the backgrounds of the people who are coming into our country, which means that our Home Office needs to be working more efficiently. Not on a general go slow, but on a general speed up, and we need to have significantly more positive relations with countries across Europe. And without that, our Home Office and our security is simply emasculated. These are details that should have been fed into the Brexit arrangement. They weren't. These are details like, for example, posting visa centres and asylum centres across Europe, and particularly across the coast of France. We don't want people risking their lives crossing the English Channel. They should be processed in France. That is the only humane way of breaking this awful trade, which risks people's lives on an extremely busy shipping lane in a very deep sea and a very cold sea. We need to break this. We need to break this cycle. We need to break this method, and the only way to do so is by negotiation with our European colleagues. That should have happened at the point when we had our when we had the referendum, when Mrs. May decided to trigger the article. That should have happened then. It didn't, because people were obsessed with irrelevance. People now need to deal with reality.